The morning sky over New York turned an unnatural shade of purple as massive ships descended through the clouds. Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face against the laboratory window, watching the impossible sight unfold. The vessels were enormous, easily the size of city blocks, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to shift colors in the sunlight. "This is not a drill," the emergency broadcast crackled through the lab's speakers. "All civilians must evacuate immediately. Unknown aircraft have entered our airspace and are not responding to communication attempts." Sarah's hands shook as she gathered her research files. 20 years of studying animal behavior at the Central Park Zoo, and now it might all be meaningless. The aliens, because what else could they be, had arrived just as humanity had always feared they would. Technologically superior, probably hostile, and completely unknown. The building shuddered as something massive landed nearby. Through the window, Sarah could see one of the alien ships settling onto the great lawn of Central Park, its landing gear crushing centuries-old oak trees like twigs. Smaller craft buzzed around it like insects, their movements precise and coordinated. A sound like thunder rolled across the city, but it wasn't thunder. It was a voice, amplified somehow to reach every corner of the metropolis. The words were in perfect English, though the accent was strange, almost musical. "Humans of Earth, we are the Zephyrian Collective. Your planet has been selected for integration into our empire. Resistance is futile. Your military forces are primitive compared to our technology. Surrender now, and your transition to our rule will be peaceful." Sarah's phone buzzed with frantic calls from colleagues, friends, and family. She ignored them all. Something else had caught her attention. In the zoo below, the animals weren't acting as she would have expected. Instead of panic, instead of fleeing, they seemed alert, focused. The lions in the African savanna exhibit stood at the edge of their enclosure, not pacing nervously as they did during thunderstorms, but watching the alien craft with an intensity Sarah had never seen before. The elephants had formed a protective circle around their calves, but their trunks were raised, testing the air. Even the usually skittish gazelles stood perfectly still, their dark eyes fixed on the purple sky. A new sound filled the air, the screech of metal being torn apart. Sarah looked up to see one of the smaller alien craft spiraling out of control, black smoke trailing behind it. It crashed into the Hudson River with a tremendous splash. Then another, and another. "What the hell?" Sarah whispered. The emergency broadcast was replaced by a confused military reporter. "We're receiving reports from across the globe that the alien craft are experiencing technical difficulties. Several ships have crashed in London, Tokyo, and Sao Paulo. Our military commanders are as puzzled as anyone. We haven't fired a single shot." Sarah grabbed her binoculars and focused on the crashed craft in the river. The metal hull had cracked open like an egg, and she could see figures moving inside, tall, thin beings in what looked like environmental suits. But something was wrong with them. They were moving erratically, stumbling, as if they were disoriented or sick. Her phone rang. It was Marcus Webb, the zoo's head veterinarian. "Sarah, thank God. Are you still in the lab? You need to see this. The animals, they're doing something I've never seen before." "I'm watching them too. What's happening?" "I don't know, but it started the moment those ships appeared. Every single species, from the tiniest insects to the largest mammals, they all began exhibiting the same behavior simultaneously. It's like they're responding to something we can't detect." Sarah focused her binoculars on the great lawn where the largest ship had landed. Aliens were emerging from it now, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They wore sleek armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. But something was wrong with them too. They were stumbling, falling, some of them pulling off their helmets as if they couldn't breathe. "Marcus, are you near the primate house?" "Yeah, I'm here now. The chimps and gorillas, they're not agitated at all. Usually any major disturbance gets them worked up, but they're calm. almost like they're waiting for something. Sarah watched as one of the aliens collapsed near the zoo's entrance. Its companions tried to help, but they were struggling too. Whatever was affecting them seemed to be getting worse. Then she saw it. A murder of crows, at least 50 of them, diving from the trees around Central Park. But they weren't attacking the aliens directly. Instead, they were targeting the small devices attached to the aliens' helmets. With surgical precision, each crow grabbed one of the devices and flew away with it. "Marcus, tell me you're seeing this." "The birds?" "Yeah, they're doing it everywhere. Not just crows, hawks, eagles, even the pigeons. It's like they know exactly what to target." As the devices were removed, the aliens became even more distressed. Some were now on their knees, clawing at their helmets. Sarah realized what was happening. Those devices weren't just communication equipment. They were life support systems, probably filtering Earth's atmosphere to make it breathable for the aliens. But how did the birds know that? A new voice came over the emergency broadcast, this time from the Pentagon. "Citizens, we're receiving reports that the alien forces are experiencing widespread equipment failures. Our preliminary analysis suggests they are having difficulty adapting to Earth's atmospheric conditions. All civilian populations should continue to evacuate while our forces assess the situation." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her research partner in California. "Same thing happening here. Zoo animals acting in perfect coordination. Primates are actually helping remove alien equipment. Bears are knocking over their supply drops. It's like they're all working together." The implications were staggering. Somehow, Earth's animals had recognized the threat and were responding with tactics that seemed almost intelligent. No, more than intelligent. They were exhibiting strategic thinking on a level that challenged everything science understood about animal cognition. On the Great Lawn, the alien commander, distinguishable by more elaborate armor, was trying to coordinate his troops through obvious distress. He barked orders in a language that sounded like music played backward, but his soldiers were in no condition to follow them. Many had removed their helmets entirely and were gasping in Earth's atmosphere. Sarah watched a group of squirrels scamper down from the trees and begin systematically chewing through cables that connected various alien devices. Elsewhere, she could see rats emerging from the sewers in organized waves, not attacking the aliens but targeting their equipment with the same precision as the birds. "This is incredible," she whispered into the phone. "They're not acting on instinct, Marcus. This is coordinated, planned." "It gets better. I just got a call from the aquarium. The dolphins and whales started echolocating like crazy the moment the ships appeared. They're creating some kind of interference pattern that's disrupting the aliens' underwater equipment." As Sarah watched, more alien craft fell from the sky, not shot down, but seemingly failing on their own. The creatures that stumbled out of them were clearly adapted for a very different environment. Their pale, elongated bodies suggested a world with different gravity. Their large eyes indicated different light conditions, and their obvious breathing difficulties proved their atmosphere was nothing like Earth's. But it wasn't just the atmosphere that was affecting them. Sarah noticed that the aliens seemed particularly distressed by certain sounds. The barking of dogs in the distance, the calls of the zoo's larger animals. Every time an elephant trumpeted or a lion roared, the aliens would cover their ears and stagger. "Marcus, what if they're more sensitive to sound than we are? What if Earth's natural audio environment is overwhelming to them?" That would explain why the animals are being so vocal. Even the usually quiet ones are making noise. As if to prove her point, a group of wolves in the zoo's habitat began howling in unison. The sound was picked up by dogs throughout the city, creating a wall of noise that seemed to physically pain the alien invaders. Several of them collapsed entirely, their weapons clattering to the ground. But the most remarkable thing was yet to come. Sarah watched in amazement as a small group of orangutans, led by Bruno, the zoo's oldest male, approached the alien perimeter. They weren't attacking. They were investigating. With the methodical care of scientists, they began examining the fallen alien equipment. Bruno picked up one of the energy weapons and turned it over in his hands. For a moment, Sarah feared he might accidentally trigger it, but instead he did something extraordinary. He began taking it apart. His thick fingers worked with surprising delicacy, removing components with the patience of an engineer. Other orangutans joined him, and soon they had several weapons disassembled into neat piles of parts. "They're reverse engineering alien technology," Sarah breathed. "This is impossible. Sarah, you need to get out of there. The military is moving in, and I don't think they understand what's happening. They might see the animals as a threat, too." But Sarah couldn't leave. She was witnessing something that would change everything humanity thought it knew about intelligence, consciousness, and the nature of life on Earth. The animals weren't just randomly interfering with the invasion, they were conducting a sophisticated counter-operation. A flight of geese passed overhead, and Sarah noticed they were carrying something. Small, cylindrical objects that looked like they had been torn from alien equipment. As the geese flew over the remaining functional ships, they dropped their cargo with remarkable accuracy. Whatever those cylinders contained, their removal was having an immediate effect on the alien technology. The largest ship on the Great Lawn was beginning to list to one side. Its engines, which had been humming steadily, were now making irregular sputtering sounds. Through her binoculars, Sarah could see aliens running back and forth inside the ship, clearly trying to repair critical systems. But the Earth's animals weren't done. A pack of wolves had emerged from deeper in Central Park and were now methodically destroying the aliens' ground equipment. Not with random violence, but with surgical precision, targeting specific components while leaving others intact. The alien commander stumbled toward his ship, but a group of ravens landed in front of him, squawking and flapping their wings, not attacking, but clearly blocking his path. Other aliens tried to help their leader, but found themselves similarly corralled by various birds and small mammals. Sarah's phone rang again. This time it was her sister calling from Denver. "Sarah, are you watching the news? The same thing is happening everywhere. The aliens are retreating. Not because of our military, they haven't even engaged yet, but because the animals are systematically dismantling their technology." "It's not just dismantling," Sarah realized, watching Bruno, the orangutan, successfully activate one of the alien devices. "They're learning how to use it." The orangutan held the device up to his ear, and Sarah could hear a faint musical sound emanating from it. Bruno's expression changed, becoming more focused, more alert. Then he handed the device to another orangutan who experienced the same transformation. "My God," Sarah whispered. "They're not just interfering with the alien equipment, they're communicating with it, learning from it." The implications were staggering. If Earth's animals could somehow interface with alien technology, if they could learn and adapt at this speed, then they weren't just Earth's fauna. They were Earth's defense system, a biological network of intelligence that humanity had never recognized. As the sun began to set over the city, the alien forces were in full retreat. Ships that could still fly were lifting off, leaving behind equipment, wounded comrades, and the shattered remains of what was supposed to be an easy conquest. But Sarah knew this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The aliens would regroup, develop countermeasures, and return better prepared. But now Earth had something they didn't expect. An ally that spanned every ecosystem, every habitat, every niche on the planet. The animals had revealed themselves as partners in humanity's survival. The question now was whether humanity was smart enough to recognize the gift they'd been given. As Sarah finally gathered her things to leave the laboratory, she looked once more at the zoo below. The animals had returned to their normal behaviors, but she could sense an underlying awareness that hadn't been there before. They were watching, waiting, ready. The invasion had failed, but the war for Earth was just beginning. and for the first time since those purple ships had appeared in the sky, Sarah felt something she hadn't expected to feel again: hope. 3 weeks had passed since the first alien retreat, and the world had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the hastily constructed command center that had once been the Central Park Zoo's administration building, watching feeds from around the globe on dozens of monitors. The screens showed scenes that would have been impossible to believe a month ago. In Australia, kangaroos were working alongside military units, their superior hearing allowing them to detect incoming alien scouts hours before human radar could pick them up. In the Amazon, jaguars were leading researchers to hidden alien observation posts, somehow sensing the electromagnetic signatures of foreign technology. "Dr. Chen, we're getting reports from the Arctic team," announced Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez, the military liaison assigned to what had officially become known as the Interspecies Defense Initiative. "The polar bears have located another crashed scout ship. They're guarding it until our team arrives." Sarah nodded, still amazed by how quickly the military had adapted to working with Earth's animals. The initial skepticism had vanished when the results became undeniable. Human-animal cooperation wasn't just effective, it was revolutionizing warfare. "Any word from Dr. Kimura in Tokyo?" she asked. "The Ravens there have started bringing in components from alien devices. She says they're actually sorting them by function. The birds seem to understand which parts are weapons, which are communication devices, and which are life support systems." Sarah walked over to a large table covered with alien artifacts. Bruno, the orangutan who had become something of a celebrity, sat carefully examining what appeared to be a navigation device. Over the past weeks, Bruno and several other primates had demonstrated an uncanny ability to understand alien technology. They couldn't operate it all, much of it required alien physiology, but they could identify its purpose and often figure out how to disable it. Dr. Marcus Webb approached with his tablet showing brain scans. "The neural activity data is incredible, Sarah. The animals aren't just acting on enhanced instinct. Their brain patterns show complex problem-solving activity that matches or exceeds what we see in human subjects." "How is that possible?" "We think the alien presence is acting as some kind of catalyst. Remember how certain animals can sense earthquakes or storms before humans do? It's like the aliens' electromagnetic signatures, their atmospheric modifications. Their very presence on Earth is activating latent neural pathways that evolution had kept in reserve." Sarah's attention was drawn to one of the monitors showing footage from Yellowstone National Park. A massive herd of bison was moving in perfect formation across the landscape, but this wasn't normal migration behavior. They were surrounding something. "Rodriguez, can you get me a closer view of that Yellowstone feed?" The image zoomed in to reveal a partially buried alien structure that human satellites had missed entirely. The bison weren't just surrounding it, they were systematically stamping on specific points, causing visible damage to the installation's exterior. How did they know it was there? Rodriguez wondered aloud. "Magnetic fields," said Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team's geophysicist. "We're discovering that many animals are far more sensitive to electromagnetic changes than we ever realized. The aliens' technology operates on frequencies that interfere with Earth's natural magnetic field. The animals can feel the disruption." A new alert chimed on the communication system. Sarah recognized the caller ID, Dr. Marie Dubois from the Marine Research Station in France. "Sarah, you need to see what the whales are doing. We've been monitoring their communication patterns, and they've developed an entirely new song structure. It's mathematical, almost like a programming language." "Programming language?" "We think they're creating a global communication network. Whales in different oceans are singing the same complex patterns, sharing information about alien movements in real time. It's like they've turned the entire ocean into a surveillance system." The implications were staggering. Sarah had initially thought the animals were simply reacting defensively to the alien threat, but the evidence was mounting that something far more sophisticated was happening. Earth's animals were actively engaging in intelligence gathering, strategic planning, and coordinated defensive operations. A commotion outside drew Sarah's attention to the window. In the zoo's main plaza, a group of researchers was working with several species of birds and small mammals. They had set up what looked like a primitive assembly line, with each species handling different components of alien technology. Crows would bring in small electronic parts, ravens would sort them by type, while skilled primates would attempt basic modifications. It was crude compared to human engineering, but it was working. They had already successfully modified several alien communication devices to work with human equipment. "Dr. Chen, we've got a priority alert from NORAD," Rodriguez announced, his expression grim. "Massive alien fleet approaching, far larger than the first wave." The main display switched to a satellite view of space. Sarah's heart sank as she saw the approaching armada. Hundreds of ships, ranging from massive carriers to swift attack craft, all heading directly toward Earth. "ETA?" she asked. 18 hours. But even as fear gripped her, Sarah noticed something on the ground-based monitors. All across the world, animals were on the move, not fleeing, but positioning themselves. Elephants in Africa were forming massive groups near known alien crash sites. Wolf packs in North America were howling in synchronized patterns that stretched across thousands of miles. Even domestic animals, dogs, cats, horses, were exhibiting unusual behavior. Dr. Webb's tablet chimed with an urgent message. "Sarah, we're getting reports that the animals are teaching each other. Techniques that work against alien technology in one location are somehow being communicated to animals thousands of miles away. That's impossible. There's no mechanism for that kind of information transfer. Unless there is, and we just never knew about it." Sarah was beginning to understand that humanity's knowledge of Earth's ecosystems was far more limited than they had ever imagined. The planet itself seemed to be responding to the alien threat as a single, coordinated organism. Her thoughts were interrupted by an excited shout from one of the researchers outside. Sarah looked out to see Bruno the orangutan holding what appeared to be a functioning alien weapon. But he wasn't threatening anyone with it. He was demonstrating its operation to a group of human scientists. "He figured out how to modify the grip," Dr. Webb said, reviewing the footage on his tablet. "The weapons were designed for alien hands, but Bruno adapted it so humans can use it effectively." Sarah watched in amazement as Bruno handed the weapon to a human researcher, then used gestures and vocalizations to explain its operation. It was clear communication, purposeful teaching behavior that spoke to intelligence levels far beyond what anyone had previously attributed to non-human animals. A new alert interrupted her thoughts. This time it was from Dr. Pavel Volkov at the Siberian Wildlife Reserve. "Dr. Chen, the brown bears here have done something extraordinary. They've built structures. Not dens, not simple shelters. Complex fortifications around the alien equipment they've collected. And they're not just random piles of rocks and logs. These are engineered barriers with clear sight lines and defensive positions." Sarah stared at the images Dr. Volkov was transmitting. The bear-built fortifications looked primitive but functional, incorporating natural materials in ways that would effectively deflect energy weapons while providing protected positions for defenders. "They're preparing for war," she whispered. "It appears so. And Dr. Chen, they're not the only ones. We're getting similar reports from every continent. Animals are building defenses, stockpiling alien equipment, and positioning themselves at strategic locations." The scope of the coordination was becoming clear. This wasn't random animal behavior triggered by alien presence. This was a planet-wide defensive strategy being implemented by every species simultaneously. Sarah's phone rang. It was her contact at the United Nations. Dr. Chen, the Secretary General, wants to know if the animal behavior can be systematically incorporated into our defense plans. I don't think we have a choice, Sarah replied. The animals aren't waiting for our permission. They're already implementing their own strategy. What do you recommend? Sarah looked around the command center, at the humans working alongside animals, at the evidence of intelligence and cooperation that challenged every assumption about life on Earth. I recommend we stop trying to direct this and start trying to integrate with it. The animals aren't our tools. They're our partners. Maybe they always have been, and we just never realized it. As the alien fleet drew closer, reports continued to pour in from around the world. Dolphins were creating sonar nets around major ports. Birds of prey were establishing aerial reconnaissance patterns. Even insects were playing their part, with bee colonies creating complex chemical communication networks that could detect alien atmospheric modifications from miles away. But perhaps the most remarkable development was happening right in Central Park. Sarah watched as Bruno approached one of the modified alien communication devices and began manipulating it with the careful precision of an experienced technician. The device came to life, emitting a soft, harmonic tone. Suddenly, every animal in the zoo turned toward the sound. Not just turned, focused with the intensity of soldiers receiving orders. The harmonic tone shifted and changed, becoming more complex, and Sarah realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. "He's talking to them," Dr. Webb whispered. "Bruno is using the alien technology to coordinate with the other animals." The implications were staggering. If one species could use alien communication technology to coordinate with others, then the defensive network Sarah had observed wasn't limited by the natural communication methods of individual species. The aliens had inadvertently provided Earth's animals with a common language. As night fell over the city, Sarah stood on the rooftop of the command center and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, hundreds of alien ships were approaching, carrying weapons and technology far beyond human capability. But down here on Earth, something equally remarkable was happening. Every ecosystem, every habitat, every corner of the natural world was preparing for their arrival. Humanity had never truly been alone on this planet, and now, facing the greatest threat in their history, they were finally beginning to understand their place in Earth's greater community. The orangutan Bruno joined her on the rooftop, carrying the modified alien communicator. He looked up at the same stars, then back at Sarah. In his dark eyes, she saw something that she had never expected to see in a non-human face: determination. The aliens were coming back, but this time they would face not just humanity, but Earth itself. Every predator, every prey species, every creature that had ever called this planet home was ready to defend it. Sarah reached out and gently touched Bruno's shoulder. "Are we ready, old friend?" Bruno's response was a low, complex vocalization that the alien communicator somehow translated into harmonics that spread across the city. In the distance, Sarah could hear the answering calls of wolves, the trumpeting of elephants, the cries of hawks, and the songs of whales in the harbor. Earth was ready. The question was whether the aliens were prepared for what they were about to face. The alien fleet arrived at dawn, blotting out the morning sun with their massive forms. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the Central Park Command Center, watching hundreds of ships descend through Earth's atmosphere. These vessels were different from the first wave, larger, more heavily armored, and equipped with atmospheric processors that created shimmering bubbles of alien environment around each ship. They learned from their mistakes, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez observed grimly. Environmental suits, atmospheric shields, sound-dampening fields. They've countered everything that stopped them before. Sarah nodded, but she wasn't concerned. Over the past weeks, she had witnessed Earth's incredible capacity for adaptation. If the aliens had evolved their tactics, so had the planet's defenders. "Dr. Chen, we're receiving signals from Bruno," announced Dr. Webb from his monitoring station. The orangutan sat at the modified alien communication array, his fingers dancing across the controls with the skill of a master technician. The device hummed with complex harmonics that spread across the electromagnetic spectrum. "What's he saying?" "It's not language as we understand it. It's more like a symphony. Different frequencies for different species, all coordinated into a single massive communication network." Through the windows, Sarah could see the immediate response. Every animal in the zoo had stopped what they were doing and assumed positions that looked almost military in their precision. The great cats positioned themselves at elevated points. The primates gathered around the alien technology they had been studying, and even the smallest mammals took up what could only be described as sentry positions. But the real marvel was happening beyond the zoo. On every monitor showing feeds from around the world, the same phenomenon was occurring. Millions of animals across every continent were moving into coordinated positions, each species playing a specific role in an unimaginably complex defensive strategy. The alien flagship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed the surrounding buildings, settled over Manhattan. Unlike the first invasion, the aliens weren't taking any chances. Heavy energy shields surrounded their ships, and robotic drones began emerging to scout the terrain. Sarah watched one of these drones approach the zoo. It was sleek and efficient, clearly designed to be immune to the animal interference that had plagued the first invasion. But as it crossed into Central Park, something unexpected happened. A simple pigeon landed on top of it. The drone continued its flight path, seemingly unaffected by its tiny passenger. But then another pigeon joined the first. Then another. Within minutes, dozens of birds were perched on the drone, not attacking it, just riding it. "What are they doing?" Rodriguez asked. Sarah smiled as understanding dawned. "They're not trying to destroy it. They're learning from it. Every sensor reading, every communication signal, every bit of data that drone collects is being observed and analyzed by some of the most intelligent problem solvers on the planet." The drone, now carrying its feathered passengers, returned to the alien ship and landed in what appeared to be a docking bay. The pigeons immediately flew off and began circling the ship, but Sarah suspected they had accomplished exactly what they intended. Her suspicion was confirmed when Bruno began manipulating his communication device with renewed intensity. The harmonics grew more complex, incorporating new frequencies that Sarah had never heard before. "He's integrated their reconnaissance data," Dr. Webb said in amazement. "Somehow those pigeons communicated the ship's internal layout, security frequencies, and operational protocols to Bruno, and now he's distributing that information to every animal on the planet." The alien commander, visible on the flagship's command deck through telescopic cameras, began issuing orders. Sarah could see the frustration in the being's movements as it gestured at displays showing the vast network of animal activity surrounding their ships. But the aliens had prepared for this. Energy weapons began charging, and the atmospheric processors increased their output, creating larger bubbles of alien-friendly environment. Whatever they planned to do, they intended to do it quickly and overwhelmingly. The first barrage came without warning. Energy beams lanced down from the ships, targeting major cities and military installations around the globe. But as the beams struck, something remarkable happened. The attacks were being deflected. Sarah stared at the satellite feeds in disbelief. The energy weapons were hitting what appeared to be concentrated swarms of insects, millions upon millions of them, creating dense clouds that somehow dispersed the alien energy. "How is that possible?" Rodriguez demanded. Dr. Vasquez was frantically checking her instruments. "The insects aren't absorbing the energy, they're redistributing it. Their chitinous shells are acting like millions of tiny mirrors. scattering the beams across wide areas and rendering them harmless. But the insects were just the first layer of defense. As the aliens adjusted their weapons to counter the swarm tactics, the larger animals began their assault. In New York Harbor, the whales launched their coordinated attack, but they weren't ramming the ships or using brute force. Instead, they were singing. The harmonic frequencies they produced were precisely calculated to resonate with the aliens' atmospheric processors. The machines, designed to maintain perfect environmental conditions, began failing as the whale songs created interference patterns that overwhelmed their control systems. Without their atmospheric shields, the aliens inside the ships began experiencing the same difficulties that had plagued the first invasion. But this time, they had backup systems and emergency protocols. What they didn't have was a defense against the coordinated intelligence of every predator on Earth. Sarah watched in awe as the true scope of the animal strategy revealed itself. This wasn't random animal behavior or simple defensive reactions. This was a military campaign planned and executed with precision that would have impressed human generals. Arctic foxes had spent weeks mapping the electromagnetic signatures of alien technology, allowing polar bears to target the exact components needed to disable ship navigation systems. African elephants had memorized the harmonic frequencies that disrupted alien communication arrays, and were now trumpeting those precise tones in perfect synchronization across their continent. Even domestic animals had their roles. Dogs throughout major cities began barking in coordinated patterns that created acoustic interference with alien sensors. Cats, with their superior night vision, were spotting and tracking the movements of alien ground forces, providing real-time intelligence to the larger predators. But the most remarkable development was happening in the depths of the world's oceans. The whales had done more than just create interference. They had formed a global network that was actively hacking into alien computer systems. "Dr. Chen, you need to hear this," Dr. Dubois called from her marine research station. "The whales aren't just singing anymore. Well, I can only describe it as coding. They're using mathematical song structures to communicate with the alien ship's computers." Sarah listened to the transmitted whale songs. And even to her untrained ear, the patterns were clearly artificial. Complex mathematical sequences that repeated and varied in ways that seemed designed to penetrate alien security systems. "They're turning the aliens' own technology against them," she whispered. The evidence was mounting on every screen. Alien ships were experiencing cascading system failures as Earth's creatures exploited every weakness, disabled every defense, and countered every strategy the invaders had developed. But the aliens had one final desperate tactic. The flagship began charging what appeared to be a massive weapon, far larger than anything they had used before. Energy readings suggested it was powerful enough to sterilize entire continents. Sarah felt a chill of fear until she noticed Bruno's reaction. The orangutan wasn't showing distress or alarm. Instead, he was working more intently than ever at his communication array, and the harmonics he was producing were becoming incredibly complex. Suddenly, every animal on Earth went silent. The absence of sound was deafening. No bird calls, no insect buzzing, no mammalian vocalizations. Even the whales stopped singing. For a moment that stretched like eternity, the planet held its breath. Then Bruno activated a new frequency on his device. What followed could only be described as the voice of Earth itself. Every animal on the planet began vocalizing simultaneously, creating a harmonic convergence that Sarah could feel in her bones. The sound wasn't just audible, it was tactile, emotional, spiritual. The alien weapons simply stopped working, not destroyed, not disabled, but somehow pacified. The energy that had been building in the flagship's massive weapon dissipated harmlessly, and across the fleet, alien technology began shutting down in a cascade of peaceful surrender. Sarah realized what had happened. The combined voices of Earth's creatures had created something beyond mere sound. It was the planet's own frequency, the harmonic signature of a world that had achieved perfect biological unity. The aliens, beings from a world where such cooperation was impossible, could not comprehend what they were experiencing. Their technology, designed for conquest and domination, had no defense against a planet that spoke with one voice. One by one, the alien ships began landing, not crashing, but settling gently onto the Earth's surface as their crews abandoned any thought of resistance. Sarah watched through the command center windows as aliens emerged from their ships, no longer in battle armor but in simple environmental suits. They moved with the careful steps of beings who had encountered something beyond their understanding. The alien commander, the tall figure she had observed throughout the battle, approached the edge of Central Park. Bruno, still at his communication array, produced a new series of harmonics, gentler now, almost welcoming. To Sarah's amazement, the alien commander began to respond, not with words but with musical tones that seemed to be attempting communication. Dr. Webb looked up from his monitoring equipment, his expression filled with wonder. I think they're trying to surrender, not just militarily, but conceptually. They want to understand what they've encountered. Over the following hours, as the immediate crisis passed, Sarah began to grasp the true magnitude of what had occurred. Earth had not simply repelled an invasion, it had demonstrated a form of planetary consciousness that challenged the fundamental assumptions about intelligence and cooperation. The aliens, it turned out, came from worlds where evolution had favored individual survival over cooperative behavior. They had achieved space travel through technology, but they had never experienced the kind of symbiotic relationships that defined Earth's ecosystems. To them, the idea that millions of species could coordinate their actions for the benefit of the whole was not just alien, it was miraculous. Bruno approached the window where Sarah stood watching the alien commander. The orangutan held out his hand, and in it was a small device, one of the alien communicators, but modified in ways that seemed to make it more friendly. The harsh edges had been softened, the colors were warmer, and it emitted harmonics that felt welcoming rather than threatening. Sarah understood. This was an invitation, not to surrender or submit, but to join. She took the device and walked outside, approaching the alien commander with careful, non-threatening steps. When she was close enough, she activated the device and spoke. "We don't want to fight," she said, trusting that the modified communicator would translate her intent, if not her exact words. "We want to understand." The alien commander's response came through the device as a mixture of music and emotion that somehow conveyed surprise, relief, and something that might have been gratitude. Around them, animals began to emerge from their positions, not aggressively, but with the curious interest of beings encountering something new and potentially wonderful. As the sun set over Central Park, Sarah watched as humans and aliens began the tentative process of communication, facilitated by the modified technology that Earth's animals had somehow made compatible with organic thought and emotion. The invasion was over, but something much more remarkable had begun. Earth had revealed itself to be not just a planet with life, but a living planet. A world where every creature, from the largest whale to the smallest insect, was part of a greater consciousness that could think, plan, and act as one. And humanity, rather than being the planet's dominant species, had discovered they were its ambassadors, the voice that could speak to the stars on behalf of the greatest cooperative intelligence in the known universe. The HFY moment wasn't that humans had defeated the aliens. It was that humans had helped Earth itself become something unprecedented in galactic history, a planet that could welcome strangers while remaining true to itself. Bruno approached Sarah as she watched the first tentative interactions between species that had never met before. The orangutan held up another modified device, this one clearly intended for her. Sarah took it and immediately felt a sensation unlike anything she had ever experienced. It wasn't telepathy or mind reading, it was connection. She could sense the vast network of consciousness that linked every living thing on Earth, from the whales singing in the oceans to the bacteria in the soil. And at the center of it all, she could feel Earth itself, patient, ancient, and infinitely wise. The planet had always been aware, but now, for the first time, it had found a way to make itself heard. The aliens hadn't just encountered a world full of life. They had encountered life itself, speaking with the accumulated wisdom of billions of years of evolution and cooperation. And that, Sarah realized, was the most human thing of all. Not that they had fought, but that they had helped facilitate the introduction of their home to the universe.